So welcome back to the LAN Party podcast. Today I'm very excited to announce we've got Tim Maloney on. So Tim, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So we chatted a little bit before we went on air here, but so my name's Tim Maloney. I'm CIO and co-founder of Round Hill Investments. And really what we are is we are a financial services company, but we're very focused on esports and digital entertainment, which we can talk a little bit about how we define it. But the genesis of the company is my business partner and I. We grew up together. We grew up playing games together. It was always a big part of our lives. And we were looking at what was happening in esports, and we kind of asked ourselves, well, how would we invest in this? I can't go buy a team. I think good for the people who can, but I don't have that much money. Really what we did is we took a step back and we looked at what we knew, which we both worked in financial services at the time. And we looked at the opportunity set available for investing in gaming companies that are, involved in esports and digital entertainment. And what we found was there was a pretty compelling set of companies that you could put together into a basket. And what we ultimately decided to do is we put that basket together and we created an exchange traded fund, which we can talk a little bit more, and I can give kind of a definition for any listeners who aren't familiar. But an exchange traded fund that tracks the industry and the opportunity set, so that investors, across the spectrum of net worth and other sort of things, can get exposure to the industry, especially with a focus on reaching the kind of gaming audience so that they can invest in what they care about. So that's what we started with, and we've been doing it for a little over a year and a half. Our product, initially got listed in June of last year. So that's a quick background. Yep.
Yeah. So it's still quite a new product, really.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I said I would do this, so I'll give a quick definition of an ETF.
Yes,
so basically,
awesome.
Yeah, sure. So an exchange traded fund, it's essentially a basket of companies that trades on an exchange, much like a stock would. So if you wanted to buy shares in Apple, you would go into your brokerage account or wherever you trade stocks, you would type in the ticker for Apple, which is AAPL, and you'd be able to buy it, the price you'd buy it. Yeah. With an ETF, the workflow is very much the same for the end users, but what you do is you type in a ticker that corresponds to the ETF. In this case, it would be NERD, which we're very proud of. But instead of buying one company, you're buying a basket of 25 companies in weights that are, you can look them up. They're publicly made available at the end of each day. You can see, but it's a way to get diversified exposure to something rather than having to build the basket yourself.
Yeah. So it's quite a nice way to spread the risk as well of trading.
That's exactly right. And I think we may go into this later, but I think even if you did have access to the capital to either invest in gaming startups, esports startups, or buy a team, unless you're making a few different investments, you very much run the risk of, if that doesn't work out, it's potentially a higher risk strategy, right?
Yeah, so exactly. It could pay off really well in that strategy, but then you could lose everything. So
yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
It spreads the risk, and like you said, it's getting involved with the gaming industry in a more risk-averse way. You mentioned earlier as well about trying to get in front of younger people as well. Kind of, what's the thinking behind that?
So yeah, that's really the second piece of our vision at Round Hill, and really what that is we think that the way the establishment, I guess, in the financial services and the investment management industry, the way they market and the way they kind of build their brand, they're missing on a lot of the key channels that are demographic. I'm a millennial, but millennial and kind of Gen Z. I think they're missing the channels that cohort is on. And as a result, I think there's a lot of white space to create content about an industry and ultimately an investment product in a compelling way that we can reach that demographic directly. We can build a brand with them and provide what we think is a valuable service in that offering a way to get diversified exposure to the industry. So how does that manifest itself? We end up being active on Twitter, active on Instagram, LinkedIn, which is, I think, a really exciting platform.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about that. We have a newsletter, but we're trying to do things differently than some of the bigger players are, because we think that if we can build that relationship with these younger investors by providing value, that there's something sustainable about that, and it's just not being done elsewhere as best we can tell.
Yeah, it seems, I mean, from my point of view, it seems like investing in stocks or whatever it is you're investing in seems to be it's almost a dark art. It seems to be something that no one really knows how you even get into it. Like, how would I start to get into it? So creating this content is a really good way to get that idea going, I think.
Yeah, no, hopefully you're right, and hopefully, because we definitely agree about that. But I think, like I said, I worked in the financial services industry, and I would see it just in conversations with friends who aren't in finance and, working in finance. There's just the education about like the opportunity set and kind of financial literacy. It's lacking, right? So if this is a low barrier to entry way to hopefully help provide some of that, then that's good.
I was even thinking the other day about, this is completely off topic.
No, let's do it.
About kind of financial literacy, like you were saying, and how in schools at the moment, when you're 13, 14, in the UK at least, you choose a set of GCSEs, and one of those has to be maths, which is really good. But what I was thinking about is, what if you didn't have to choose maths, but you had a choice between math, like I'm doing algebra, I'm doing all of that kind of thing, or you've got finance, which is still a type of maths, but it's a more business maths, like you're saying. What do you think that would be a good idea, or do you think it's?
I think so. I don't know exactly how. I mean, look, I think there's a lot of jokes that you can find on the internet about, like, I haven't used algebra since algebra class, but here I am. I can't do my taxes. I have, I lack the basic skills that are actually needed to survive in the world.
Exactly.
I think there's something to it. I don't know how it gets put into play, but yes, I think, and in a lot of cases, it's maybe just having some like more practical applications built in. Like, you could have a math class where part of it is, learning how to calculate. I mean, taxes is a terrible example for that.
But anyway. Maybe something a little bit more intense, maybe. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
If you take a look at Elon Musk, he teaches his children and some other elites, I guess, just the stuff they want to learn. He has his own school for them. They don't do all the classic maths or anything. No, they just, like, if they want to do rocket science or whatever, they can go and do that. It's pretty cool, actually, which I prefer personally. I think that makes more sense, and I can't think of anything that I've used.
No.
Is he actually teaching that? Because I mean, I would go back to school to have Elon Musk as a teacher.
I think he does. And then he has, like, other people from specific industries where their children go and then they teach something, from what my understanding of it.
Well, that is
interesting. Now, Elon Musk is actually a little bit of a gamer himself. I'm not sure how much of that. I was at E3 last year, and he was doing a demo where they were introducing gaming into a Tesla. So we actually went, and we have these hats that have our ticker, so like $sign and then nerd. So we ran up and gave him a hat after, because we figured in the off chance he puts himself in potentially regulatory issues again and, like, puts a tweet out with that, then, like, bravo, we win.
Exactly. We win. Nice work. That is perfect.
Anyway, Elon. Character, that guy.
What a dude. He's amazing.
I'm
sure we could talk about education for ages. I've got a ton of ideas, but never going to happen. So with obviously you kind of made this decision to kind of go into the esports media world. What prompted that decision? Was it the fact, is it like a sound business idea, or was it, are you a gamer yourself, or what's the background behind it?
So it's a little bit in the middle. So I
Mhm.
think part of it, if you look at what we're trying to do at Roundhill more broadly, you need to have a compelling sort of investment thesis, which I think gaming and esports fits. You
Yes.
need to know that that thesis makes sense to the demographic that you are trying to build a business around. And it needs to be something that you're able to talk about. Otherwise, how are you going to create content? So it fit on those three fronts. I kind of thought I'd get to game more as a part of research, but that hasn't ended up playing out quite like I hoped it would.
Wow.
But I think high level from a business point of view, that was important. But I think when you look at the opportunity within esports and kind of gaming, so we call our fund an esports and digital entertainment fund. The reason being it's meant to look at the opportunity set associated with competitive gaming, with game live streaming and game streaming, and with the social component that kind of they all feed off each other in a lot of ways. So I think they're hard to detangle. But when you look at that opportunity set, I think frankly, we said to ourselves, most people who are in the investing world aren't paying attention here. That to me means there's an opportunity, because if they start paying attention, they're going to need something that we're offering, whether it's our product or our thought leadership. So that's the business side. As far as gaming myself, and I think we'll probably go into this, I've always been a gamer. I have an Xbox, an N64, and a Switch in my apartment.
Nice.
Like I said, I don't get to use them as much as I'd like, but it's something that I think for my generation and younger, it's such an important part of life for a large percentage of us. And I think that's only going to become a higher and higher percentage. And I think that, again, there's not enough focus on how important this industry is to people like ourselves.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I've dealt with loads and loads of investors over sort of the last couple of years, and I go in and I say, even just mentioning the word esports, they're like, "What's that?" And if they do know what it is, they're like, "Not too sure." Because in my opinion, it's still quite a developing market. It's still quite young, to me personally. There's so much that can be done, but yeah, you go in and they just have no idea. And the amount of people that have just been like, "Nah, we're not really interested." However, well, you pitch it, just because they don't understand the business, the whole market of it. So it's quite nice to see people actually trying to get involved in esports for investment. Particularly from my experience with it, it's just so difficult.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, and I think one question I get a lot. Part of my job is talking to investors about you should check out this industry. A lot of people will just ask the very generic question of, what do you mean people watch other people play video games? Like, why wouldn't they just play games themselves? And I hate to draw on professional sports analogies because I don't think it's always a great analogy, but are you still playing tackle football? No. What do you do on Sunday? You probably watch football. I don't understand how that argument comes up as much as it does, but it does.
It's so true. It's such a strange thing, and it's something that I've been talking to other people about around. I was talking to a guy today who does a football podcast every week, and I mentioned it to him. I was like, "Would you ever cover esports? Like, if they did a Madden esports event, would you cover that?" And he's like, "Actually, I think I would, because it's still football, so you can still enjoy the same game even if you want to. You don't have to actually go that far. You don't have to go to League of Legends, Call of Duty. You can watch football, but it's just online. It's digital."
Well, it's quite interesting to see actually how many football players, and even, for example, what's his name, Drake, the music artist, how much they're getting involved in esports and in gaming. I mean, a lot of I actually saw something recently where a professional NFL player has now become a professional esports player because there's loads less injuries, and it's exactly the same thing, except you're just doing it with a controller instead of actually getting absolutely smashed down to the ground.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of that. I think the NFL and NBA in particular, you're seeing a lot of it. But I think the one you're thinking of is Juju Smith-Schuster from Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a member of FaZe Clan, which is
I know who you're on about. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be someone else. There's been a few. There's a lot of I think crossover, and I think part of it too is, I mean, part of it ties back to just influencer culture. I hate to use that term because it's probably not the perfect one, but these individual players, 20 years ago, there wasn't really a way for an NFL wide receiver to build this personal brand for themselves, but now there is. And if you can do it and you like gaming, like, why wouldn't you tie the two together? So anyway, I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think in some ways, when people try and tie it back to traditional sports, it's not apples to apples, and it maybe isn't the right comparison. But on the flip side, I think when we talk about building awareness for what's happening in the gaming industry and making it relatable to people who don't game themselves, it is kind of an important tool to get that buy-in.
Yeah, it works to get the message across enough to, like you say, get the buy-in. But like you say, there's some differences.
Yep.
So what is your, do you actually watch esports yourself, or do you prefer just to play if and when you can?
I do. I would say if you were to split up, kind of esports and gaming more broadly, I was more of a game, like a recreational gamer. I'm frankly not very good at video games, which I hate saying. And the ones I am any good at are like, not to be insulting to these communities, but it's like fighting games and racing, which are not really, it's not MOBAs, it's not first person shooters. It doesn't quite get the same publicity.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will say I have started following more closely the individual kind of tier 1 leagues, just because I need to know what I'm talking about. And it's real entertainment. I think when you look at the opening ceremony for Worlds this year, like that's real entertainment on anyone's spectrum. It's just a matter of getting people to see it. And I've shared that video with people who don't follow, and they're like, wow.
Amazing. Yeah. They really, I think with esports, they go all in on a lot of stuff. And I think they can, because they get these big arenas. They've got a lot of money behind them as well. And I feel that the actual event, running an event like that, is fairly cheap in the grand thinking of things. So they can put more into more entertaining elements of it.
Yeah, although I did think it was interesting, a little bit of a side note, but one question I've always had is how much power do the publishers have in the ecosystem? And I think it's a lot. And in theory, they can run their own events, and a lot of them do that. But we actually saw, I just want to make sure I get my numbers here, but Blizzard is now using Modern Times Group, which is a portfolio holding, and ESL to run their Blizzard and their StarCraft and Warcraft events, which is interesting because
that is interesting.
Yeah, they announced it last week, and there's kind of two sides of it. One could be they're focusing their efforts on what I think are their more popular. Yeah, exactly. But it is still, I think, interesting to see that there is value for those third-party, event companies, because I think it is a specialized skill. And anyway, that's a little bit of a side note, but I thought that was interesting.
It's really interesting, especially from Blizzard, because typically Blizzard have been very controlling with all their IP, and they've made it, particularly with Overwatch, which is, I think, one of the more popular titles. They have pretty much restricted anyone to potentially running an event. I think it's impossible to run a proper tournament in Overwatch that isn't done by Blizzard itself. So it is interesting to see them just kind of relinquish control of these other IPs and let other people run it.
Yep. I was surprised, and it comes back to, we may get to this, but I think when you look at some of the esports orgs, like the challenge for them is going to be to find creative ways to effectively become profitable, because unlike traditional sports, and again, don't always love these analogies, but no one owns the game of football. Someone owns the IP behind all these games. And at a certain point, like, they're a gatekeeper to the revenue channels, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
if they slap some rules on running tournaments, then or whatever they want to do,
right,
then they could just stop it or do whatever they want to do.
Right.
which is quite an issue. But going back to revenue, actually, I did hear a interesting stat the other day, which I think it was like an esports, the average kind of value of an esports viewer, I think is about $20, whereas the average NFL viewer is around $250. So it's, how do you think there's any ways that they can kind of increase that value per viewer?
So I do, and I always find those data points to be fascinating. I think there's a lot of catch up that needs to take place within kind of fan monetization. And there's a few ways to get there. I do think that in a lot of cases, those numbers are maybe a little bit too specific to just the competitive side of esports. Because again, if you have, a big fan of the Overwatch League, the revenues from in-game purchases aren't necessarily being tied back to esports, but it could be that really that fan was cultivated as an esports fan, right? So I do think there's that, but no, I think for the orgs, it's going to be necessary for both orgs and for the actual publishers to figure this out. But creative ways to monetize an audience is, it's going to be different channels most likely than traditional sports. It's not all going to be media rights, although there'll be some of that. But that being said, I think there's ways to do it. So I think one that always comes up is FaZe Clan to me, where sure, they don't necessarily have, their own kind of fully owned franchise slots in the big leagues. They have some exposure there, but they have a tremendous influencer base. And I think that's a really good way for them to build a brand. And I think that's potentially more sustainable because they have more control over monetization in the long run. So that's it.
Yeah,
just one example of doing things differently.
Yeah, I like it. And like you say, FaZe Clan does have that brand building expertise, I think, because they don't play any games that I particularly follow, but I still know of them, and I still kind of know quite a bit about them because of, like you say, they've got this influencer base. They've got a larger reach than a lot of teams do, even top tiers.
Yep.
So going on from that, with your own promotion and getting yourself in front of the people you want to, what we mentioned, obviously you're doing LinkedIn, Twitter, and all of those. Kind of what do you think is the most effective way for you at the moment?
So there's sort of two different separate categories of promoting we do, or promoting, excuse me. There's promotion of the actual fund, which, because it's a very regulated industry, we're really limited in what we can do. And then there's promoting Roundhill and ourselves. We focus our time and efforts, frankly, on Roundhill and ourselves because we can be a lot more active. And I think, we mentioned some of the mediums we use. I think there's a lot to be said for being able to build an audience on the channels we're active on. So Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, things like that. And again, it's something that the traditional investment managers are not doing. So those are really the ones we're most active on. We do have an email newsletter as well. We try to find ways to build an audience where, we give our audience a certain amount of credit and know that they'll figure out we have an investment product they can invest in. It's a little bit of a leap, but that being said, there's value in and of itself to building this brand where you have some sort of thought leadership. And I also think we comment on things a little bit differently than most people talking about esports, right? We're looking at, how take a big number that you see out there. We're going to say this number exists. Here's why it's relevant to these companies as they kind of build a business in this segment, right? And I think if we can provide value that way, that's hopefully a way to continue growing that audience.
Yeah, it's just getting that, like you said, that different spin on it and promotion.
Right.
Ways. Yeah.
Exactly. Like we don't want to get into the business of breaking news necessarily. There's a lot of outfits that do that and do that very well.
Yeah.
But if we can tie it back and make people think about the potential implications from an investing point of view, that's kind of where we want to sit. And look, for some people that's not going to be relevant and they may not really care what we're putting out there, but that's not our audience then, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. If they're not interested in that at this point, then that's up to them.
right.
What would you say is the most effective channel for you at the moment then?
Yeah. I think email has become probably the most successful. Yeah. I think it's important to have a regular place in people's schedule. So we're actually still playing with whether or not we want to be like Saturdays or Sundays, for example, for the newsletter. Okay. I think that's a really effective one to have as a cornerstone. We try to cover everything else on the other channels as it goes. But we're constantly trying new things, and we're also somewhat limited even in our own personal social media accounts for what we can use, because we have to archive everything for 7 years. So yeah, some of the rules are a little absurd, but like, for example, Discord, we can't effectively archive, so I can't use Discord for work purposes at all.
That is insane.
Yeah, and as a result, I kind of just don't use it, because if I'm on Discord in like the gaming area, like how am I not working?
Yeah,
kind of hard to.
There's that gray area where it could turn into work, even if it's you're not supposed to be.
Yeah. Anyway, I promise I wouldn't go too far into the regulatory compliance side of it, because it's boring to just about everyone but me. But it's a short answer of saying I think there's some channels we can use that we've found ways to use pretty effectively. Yeah. So
see, I find it quite interesting, because I used to work in data security, so all that stuff I understand, and it's interesting actually to me. Like you say, it's boring to most people, but it's interesting to me that Discord doesn't allow some sort of archiving system, especially with the amount of sort of esports related businesses and teams actually use it for communication. And
sorry.
Yeah.
No, carry on.
No, I was going to say it may be that it can be archived. We just have one service provider we work with, and some of it's silly. Like, I think we were told we couldn't do ads on Reddit, which who knows if running ads on Reddit's even a good idea, because I think Reddit would just, but anyway, we were told we couldn't do ads on Reddit because we wouldn't be able to control the comments, but we were allowed to run ads on Twitter and Instagram, where the functionality is the same.
Yeah, it's the exact
interesting.
So that was one where it was just like, okay, like you got your rules, like we'll play.
Yeah, we'll do what we can, I guess, with that.
Yeah, but it's interesting. And look, we are regulated. We want to make sure we're doing everything within the rules. I would say sometimes we're even maybe conservative, because the last thing we want to do is run afoul of a rule. Like, that's just not going to be good for our business. But I think there's a lot of these mediums just new rules haven't been made to account for using them. So we try to find the best ways to use them where it's, in accordance with the law. Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
How regulated would you say that you think the industry is at the moment? Financial
services?
Yeah, but in terms of sort of the esports side.
Our regulatory issues are all on the financial services side, and being an ETF product issuer, we wouldn't have any issues if we were just communicating about gaming, as far as I know. I mean, there'd be some things, but much less than what we're currently dealing with. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So earlier as well, you also mentioned about social gaming, and you think that term gets used incorrectly. Yeah.
So I do think there's some arguments to the conversation of gaming as potentially the next social networks. I think it sometimes gets misapplied, but the way I look at it is I used to go home from school and jump on AOL Instant Messenger, right? That was how I communicated with friends. Hopefully everyone listening knows what that means, but if not, it's basically like, it was basically just a chat system.
It was what, Facebook Messenger,
but through AOL with
through AOL.
A horrible login sound like anyway, that's what I did to keep in touch with people. Now kids go home and they play Fortnite to talk to their friends. And in a lot of cases, yeah, sure, they're trying to win, but winning's almost secondary to the social component of it. So I do think there's some truth to potentially having these be the next social network or social kind of gathering place. I mean, it's really all Epic, not to discount efforts others have made, but what Epic's been doing is incredible with the Marshmallow concert, the Black Hole, where they got millions of people to watch other people watching a black hole on a screen.
Yeah.
I mean,
madness.
That's a Harvard Business School case study 5 years from now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it should be.
It should be.
And then the recent Star Wars activation. I mean, I saw a post on Twitter that really stuck in my head where it was like, it was an older gentleman and he was just like, I've been trying to get my kids to watch Star Wars for 10 years. And they get a lightsaber in Fortnite and they've watched like all of the original movies with me in the last like 2 days.
No way. That is incredible.
Yeah. And then it transcends the game itself. And like all of a sudden, if you're a company that has kind of, IP from another form of media from a little while back that you want to leverage, like you should be calling Epic and being like, can we do an activation ASAP?
Yeah. Can we throw something in Fortnite?
Exactly.
I've seen recently as well. I don't know. Are you on TikTok at all?
That's another one that we can't archive. I follow TikTok, and I see a lot of TikTok basically videos being ported onto my other channels.
Yeah.
So TikTok's a fascinating platform.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah. We can get more into TikTok maybe in a bit, but basically Fortnite, I think it might have been on Saturday, they released a advertising campaign with TikTok that users take a sound that Fortnite have created and they create their own dance to it, and obviously hashtag Fortnite, and the winner of this kind of dance off gets that dance put into the Fortnite game.
And wow,
it's amazing, and it's had millions of views and thousands of videos being created for it already. And it's just like you say, Epic just have this way with marketing themselves and marketing on Fortnite that is constantly building hype. Yeah,
that's so I think I've seen references to what you're talking about. I haven't dove in. I mean, you take 24 hours off in this industry and you're way behind.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating partnership and I think will be great for both platforms. I don't know if TikTok needs any help here in the US. I think it's done a pretty good job, but still.
Did you, if you could kind of archive in TikTok, do you think it's something you would venture into?
It is. This is where the question becomes, would I be an effective user of TikTok? I don't know that anyone wants to see, maybe I'm wrong. I would guess no one wants to watch my TikTok videos.
Are you sure?
But you know what? I guess there's only one way to find out is to get on there. I wouldn't be surprised if we're on TikTok at some point in the future. I just don't know that I'm the right person for it. But
yeah, lip syncing and dancing.
I just don't see. Yeah, I guess I don't have the video up here, which I apologize to anyone who's watching this. I'm in the process of moving, and my apartment's an absolute disaster. But I don't know that the camera is the right medium for me.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah.
Maybe someday.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll see you TikTok star, millions of followers. Who knows?
God. Oh God.
Do you do any video at all for your social channels?
Yes. So one thing we experimented with was LinkedIn live videos, which I kind of mentioned this earlier. I think LinkedIn's a really effective platform, especially for us sitting at the intersection of kind of investing in gaming. We've done a little bit of LinkedIn live. I think we're probably going to keep doing it. I think it's it's hard to build an audience from scratch, which is basically
absolutely.
what we're doing. But I think there's a lot of value to it. I think video gets really good engagement, especially if it's live. So we've done some work with video. So there is footage out there of me in front of a camera if people are so inclined to dig it up.
It out. Yeah, might search them out and put some links in the description so that
you could start a TikTok for me, and I wouldn't even know about it.
You wouldn't know. I'll just do that. Maybe I'll do some deep fakes as well or something.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. It's all
That'd be interesting to see.
It's funny.
You ever thought about like doing? I know it sounds like a bit of a weird channel to maybe go to, but trying to do like Twitch streaming. I know that yours obviously investment, but you see things like this where you get just company that isn't relevant. Some of them, I know yours is relevant to gaming, but you get some that aren't relevant to gaming at all, and they're just sat there gaming. It's just essentially free advertisement, really, isn't it?
Yep. No, I think there's something to be done with Twitch and with just live video in general. But like you look at Twitch, and it's always been primarily for gaming, but they're building out their other, whatever you want to call it. I think they call it like in real life. That may not be right, but I think there's room if you can come onto Twitch with enough of a presence. And to my point about me not being the camera guy, like we would probably need to hire someone specifically to do this, and have a show that's about kind of investing and making it, appeal more to the audience that you would find on Twitch. A lot of value there if someone can figure it out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But then the problem is, I guess, is that if they try and dilute it too much with like other, expand their horizons, I guess, with other industries, for example, will it that could be the killer then of Twitch? I know it's a huge thing, but you see these massive companies try and do too much, and then it just completely wipes it out. And Twitch is known to be sort of the gaming platform, isn't it?
Yep.
I guess,
go ahead.
So I was going to say, I guess if it was me personally, and I was, Amazon, I would probably create a secondary platform that would then revolve around the other market.
Right, which would be pretty funny because it'd be full circle, right? You had Justin TV that kind of figured out, gaming's actually the best opportunity. And then if Twitch were to spin back out, whatever they wanted to call it, it could be interesting. I do think that's probably true. But then you run the risk, if you're Twitch, of you're not actually helping convert any of these people who watch video games on Twitch into viewers of these other mediums if they're not connected. So it's a balancing act, I think.
Yeah. How about Mixer? What's your thoughts on that one as well?
As a platform for us, or in general?
Just in general, really, because I've seen a lot of these like streamers, big ones, starting to move over to Mixer.
Yep. So there's the great kind of streaming war that most people in traditional media don't talk about, which is on the game streaming side. I think you've seen a lot of departures from Twitch. There's a lot of reasons you could put behind it. I think it's typically a combination of money and lifestyle. So some of these platforms, will I don't know if reward's the right word, but you can be a creator on a lot of these other platforms and not put as much time in and still kind of stay relevant. But I think at the end of the day that right now, if you're a game streamer and you have an audience, you have a position of power, because if you're on Twitch, you can go and speak to Mixer, you can speak with YouTube, you can speak with, there's a lot of platforms that you can go out there and potentially move over to. Facebook Gaming is another one. And we've seen that. And I think at the high level, it's important for all these non-Twitch video platforms to build an audience. But I also think it's going to be important in the long run to build a bench behind the top names, because it's a little hard if all you have is the high-end content creators. So I think that's going to be the challenge for all these other platforms, is building out the middle class, for lack of a better way to put it. I think that probably doesn't sound very nice. It's not intended to be mean, but I think there needs to be other things to watch and to discover underneath the the ninjas of the world, right?
Exactly. Especially if you're trying to keep people on the platform as well, because if they're not streaming at the time you want to be watching and you've got nothing else, then they're just going to go back to Twitch. So
Exactly.
Build this group of, like you say, like you say, the middle class.
Yeah, no, I realized after I said that I probably shouldn't have. That's going to be a TikTok video, isn't it?
Yeah,
Me
that's
talking
good.
about the middle class of streamers.
That's going to get some
horrible.
hate.
I will also say though, when you look at the game, the live streaming companies here in the US, they're all embedded in these larger tech companies. So it's sometimes hard to look at their strategy for their streaming platform without taking into account the broader business. So like for Microsoft, for example, like Mixer is important, but if they can find a way to leverage Mixer to drive revenue into other high value channels for them, whether it's, people buying consoles or subscriptions to other types of services, like that could be enough for them, where Mixer's just a loss leader. They lose money on it, but they could almost look at it as advertising for their other offerings.
In other things.
Right.
Yeah.
Brings them into the ecosystem.
Exactly. Because I was worried when Amazon bought Twitch that they would kind of incorporate it into this Amazon Prime Video monster, which I'm glad they haven't done yet. But it's always on my mind.
I don't think they will. I think that they will keep it separate as much as possible.
I actually get the same feeling. I've been down to their offices here in San Francisco, and as far as I can tell, it is a separate company in all ways, ex ownership. Obviously, I don't have any special insights there, but it seems like they're gonna build that out.
Yeah, it runs its own thing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So did we ask what your favorite game was?
We didn't. I mentioned that I'm a fighting game guy and a racing game guy. So with that in mind, my favorite game is Smash on N64. Yeah. So I still have that. Although I realized like I said, in the process of moving, and I have 3 controllers that are like not great. So it's kind of unfair when I had people over to play, because I know the one controller is better. So I got to get some new controllers, but that's my favorite. I do play it on Switch too. But yeah, that's been my favorite game since it came out, basically.
That's amazing. Has it?
That's a great game.
So you kind of more into that kind of fighter, or is Tekken out of bounds?
More that type of fighter. It's really, I guess I shouldn't even say, I just really like Super Smash Brothers.
Just basically just Super Smash Brothers,
But I am, generally speaking, more capable at picking up a fighting game than I am like a first-person shooter. My aim's terrible. I just have no shot. And then I've tried to, over the past year or so, to like teach myself how to play League and Dota 2. And I just...
They're solid, they are.
I have so much more respect for the people who play that game at a high level. I fell into a Reddit forum about Dota strategies once, and I was like, this is they're playing chess and I'm playing tic-tac-toe. Like it's not good. So yeah, the other one I would put in the mix, also an old game and doesn't have an esports presence at all, but I was a big Need for Speed Most Wanted fan back in the day. You get that M3 set up and run away from what was the cop's name? Sharp or not Sharp?
No. I was literally playing it the other day.
Yeah. I can't remember. But yeah, that's a quality game.
Yeah.
I've always
remember that game
the
so
Need for Speed. I was more into kind of Gran Turismo. I love those.
They were a little too realistic for me. I remember I couldn't get my S-Class license, and I was like, this is ridiculous.
What? I remember I managed to grind all my way up there. I got an F1 car at one point. Which was
Oh, nice.
Same.
All right, so I'm not even good at racing games anymore compared to everyone else.
I think when you're 13 and 14 and have nothing else to do, I think you eventually just pick it up.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
It's like I mean the actual level of games I play now is terrible. It's absolutely awful.
I've been doing all right recently. I had a bit of a downfall since sort of Modern Warfare 2, and then recently, like since the new Call of Duty's come out, I've really picked up my game again. Getting pretty good. But
I had a Mac since I was about 18 until couple of years ago, and so I wasn't able to really play games. There are only a few, so I basically played Total War for 8 years, which we got pretty decent at. And now I'm starting to pick up racing games and shooter games again, and I'm awful, but it's good fun.
If you're ever in Birmingham, Tim, you should let me know, because there's loads of Super Smash tournaments in Birmingham. There's a couple of my friends, and they compete in them and everything. Probably it's about 2 or 3 a week in Birmingham. It's a huge presence there. Yeah, there's a massive presence of Super Smash tournaments over there.
Interesting.
I mean, most of them are amateur, but you probably get one professional one a month, and then you get loads of amateur ones set around. And also, they've just opened a like a little gaming sort of, not arena, that's the wrong word, but there's a little gaming area in the Custard Factory. Is that the right name for it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they host all their tournaments there now.
Interesting. I mean, look, the fighting game community has, without a ton of support from the actual developers over time, it's a really, I mean, grassroots built community, but it's a presence. So, but that's good to know about Birmingham.
Yeah. It's huge. It's massive there. Yeah. They'll get at least. I mean, I was talking to them, and they will. I was like, oh, because they're sort of amateur. I was like, oh, they probably get like 12 mates together or something, and they're like, nah, we've had about 160 people register at once, and like you got to filter it down, and then this tournament will go on for about a month because everyone's coming together once every week to do this tournament. I think at the moment they're getting about 230 in for a tournament.
Wow.
And these are just all amateurs, people like, you know, us lot really, that want to have a bit of fun and and really enjoy that game like yourself. But yeah, huge. And this is many tournaments a week as well.
Yeah, it's just, again, for me, it's like Nintendo has never really supported the community, or at least not recently.
No.
It just seems like a missed opportunity. I mean, I think they'd probably sell more games if they were to support the community and make the prize pools bigger and all that, but I don't know. It's a great company on a lot of other fronts. I think like there's a lot to look forward to if you're looking at Nintendo, but they kind of are missing the boat on esports, I think.
Yeah.
Personal opinion.
No, I think that's quite a large opinion for everyone else. I mean, from what I've spoken to, because I'm working on other things at the moment, can't really mention yet, but I was talking to a few others about it in the Super Smash tournaments, and they said that's like there's no ladders, there's no leagues, and it's just you've got to organise it all yourself. Even they said to me, there's just no support there, and I recommend them a couple of websites where it might help them out, and they use them now. But they were saying there's just nothing there to help us. Like you've got to grow it yourself. You've got to try and build it yourself in a way.
Yep. And I mean, if you look at like Nintendo makes money, like they could put money into this, and even if they want to look at it as a marketing expense, I mean, there's ways to build, and there's nothing like a big prize pool to bring attention to your game. I mean, you look at what Valve did with Dota over the years. It's like, and then what we've seen with Fortnite. It's like these prize pools, they're meaningful. They create more players. They create more eyeballs. Like, anyway, I think maybe someday they change it too. Go ahead.
I don't know. Nintendo seems to be quite. I feel they're going to be left behind. With their games, I know there's a new game Temtem that's coming out. Their recent Pokemon wasn't particularly well received.
I had fun, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I always love Pokemon. I've played it since Pokemon Red, I think was the first one, and Pokemon Yellow.
Yeah. I was blue. My brother had red, but
Oh yeah. You've always got to have one of each.
Otherwise, you can't catch them all. You gotta.
I know. You've got to do the swaps. But yeah, I think overall the recent one wasn't the best because it is basically the same thing. I don't think they've changed it since.
Yep.
They've updated the graphics a bit. The Switch was awesome, but then there's other things that they're not doing that they could, like you say, with esports, they could be doing a lot better to promote these games that will get way more sales.
I think so too.
Mm.
We shall see.
We shall see what happens with Nintendo. Yeah, hopefully they don't go anywhere. They do well. I like the things they put out mostly.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance they'll win, or they'll continue to succeed from other initiatives they have. Like I think Switch and Switch Lite, I think it is. The fact that they're now in China is big. Pokemon, they're actually, I think it's in a couple months, but they're releasing like an expansion pack on Sword and Shield, which is kind of a new thing for them. It's like continued monetization of the same game. So they're definitely doing some interesting things, but we shall see if they ever kick up their esports efforts.
Yeah, to the big leagues.
Yeah, exactly.
So going back to Smash quickly, who's your favorite hero?
So I really like playing with Ness.
Oh, really?
I do. I've looked recently at like the power rankings, I guess, and that he never seems to screen that well. I don't know. I just don't think a lot of people play with him. So when I play against my friends, they've never played against Ness, or an effective Ness. So I don't know. Ness is always my go-to.
It's almost that like a niche pick that no one really knows how to handle. So it's just good.
A little bit. Yeah. I'm sure if I was trying to compete at a higher level, there's plenty of weaknesses for Ness that can be exploited quite easily. But my friends haven't really figured. My friends, except for one friend, who if he ever finds this, is going to be like, "You suck at Smash." But
stop saying like you're amazing and you're beating all your friends.
I know.
That's incredible. So do you mainly kind of get people around and play? Is it kind of quite a social gathering, or do you play it online?
I've tried to over the years. That's why I've always kept the N64. I think people like to come over and kind of have a throwback type night. I haven't done that recently as much as I should. That being said, I do have an Xbox. I do play live. My business partner and I would occasionally talk through business related things while playing Apex.
Love it.
He's good. He's good at Apex. I'm terrible. But yeah, I would say it's probably a good mix of in person and online at this point. But I don't know. I'm a little old school in my choice of games, which kind of hinders it. If you want to play Smash 64, you can't play online.
yeah, that's true. I don't think it has any. It wouldn't have any connection to the internet, would it?
No, it wouldn't. But one thing I've always wondered, I'm curious if you guys have thought about this. How did everyone know to blow in the cartridge for N64 if it's not working? Because that was pre-internet, but everyone knew.
Yeah,
the whole world.
I don't know. It's just some kind of N64 psychic link or something. I don't know.
The word just got out there and took off, I guess.
Someone just blew in the cartridge one day and was like, oh, it works again.
It works again.
I'll tell my friend.
I read online that you're not even supposed to do that. You're supposed to. I read something that said take a Q-tip and put rubbing alcohol on it, and it actually worked for a game that wasn't working with the blow in the cartridge trick. So if you ever
do that,
you're ever really having an issue.
It makes more sense than blowing in it, but
way more sense.
way more sense. It makes way more sense.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. That is awesome. Do you ever explore outside of e-games, internet gaming, and go into kind of board games, or?
Yeah, we play some board games. I have some friends who play a lot of board games, so I'm typically being brought up to speed when we play a new game.
Yeah.
Any in particular you have in mind? Because I can show up and bring a new game and seem cooler than I really am.
I mean, I've got a ton of games ranging from your kind of party games, like I don't know if you played Codenames or anything like that before.
I love Codenames.
Codenames is fantastic.
Such a good game.
Yeah,
such a good game.
It's a great party game. It just gets everyone going together. All the way through to I've got a Star Wars game that takes probably 4 or 5 hours to play.
Pass the Pigs.
Monster. Oh, Pass the Pigs.
One. That's my favourite. So easy.
I mean, it's just full of games.
Oh wow! Nice.
Stuff, so
yeah, I'm up for some longer games sometimes. It's sometimes hard to get people to play with you. Like I just gave my brother, because I'm trying to clean stuff out. I had a Game of Thrones Game of Thrones edition, which was a lot of fun. The one time I convinced enough people to play with me, but it takes like 4 hours.
Yeah, it takes a long time, and it's some of the games like that. It's kind of the setup almost takes longer than the game. You're like, sorry, but we need to put this here and do that, and
yeah, and you need serious players too, because if you don't have it, it becomes just a game of attrition. Like one person just gives up and goes on a rampage campaign that they know they can't win, and then it's unfair to whoever takes them out, and so
exactly.
But
it just ends up messing around. Yeah, love a good board game as well. That's awesome. I think that's all the things we kind of had lined up to talk about today.
Well, yeah. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course.
It's been great.
Hopefully it's interesting for your listeners. But if they give negative feedback, I don't want it.
Yeah, I mean, if they give negative feedback, we're taking it down. So
it'll be that middle class comment. We'll edit it out.
Yeah, that's gonna get me fame in the wrong way in the gaming industry or something.
I mean, we had Lucas Sankala on the other night, and he was throwing out some serious hate on Fortnite. So I think that's going to pale in comparison to what the hate he's going to get, I feel.
Okay. The whole Fortnite's not esports argument?
Yeah, that got brought up. I get it. I do get it, because it's not your skill can be limited by the luck and the RNG you get. But yeah, it's probably, that's not a rabbit hole I think we go down right now. You don't want to comment on that then.
No, I don't.
No, well, you can watch that episode when it's out.
I will.
Just kind of go, yeah, I agree with that, in kind of to yourself, like, yeah, I agree. So if there's anything you want to promote about yourself or Roundhill, if there's anything you can promote, that is the other question, then go for it.
Yeah, there is. So we're active on Twitter at Roundhill. We're also on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me, Tim Maloney. I think we have a newsletter that we put out every week. We cover 5 stories from the industry and what the sort of implications are from an investor's point of view. So hopefully that's useful to people. And if you trade stocks or ETFs, check us out. The ticker's NERD. You can find more info at nerdetf.com. And we're pretty easy to find, and we're pretty responsive. So reach out, questions, comments, concerns. We want to keep meeting people. So
yeah, talk and just reach out and talk. I love it.
Well, I'm definitely going to be looking into Nerd. I've been looking at it this evening after you mentioned it, and definitely something I think I might get involved in.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, we look forward to having you as a shareholder.
Thank you.
Can I start with 50p? See where it goes.
Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, that's where you can find us. I'm on Twitter as well at Maloney Sandwich. But
nice. That's an amazing Twitter name.
Thank you. Yeah, I wish my content was even more amazing. But that's where I am. So give me a follow.
That's perfect. And we'll put links to as much as we can down in the description.
Awesome.
So everyone can get to that easily, which is awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's it. That's it for today. I hope everyone who's listening has learned something and got something out of it. And we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for listening to the LAN Party podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've enjoyed recording it. It's amazing talking to these incredible people. We're always looking for more people to come on, so if you're in the esports industry, just get in touch and let us know you're interested in coming on board. Also, LAN Party is a project that we're working on right now, and we are currently looking for investment to make it even more of a reality, to speed the project up, to make it better than it could be with what we've got at the moment. And we're also looking for developers who maybe want to come on board and work with us on creating this new technology that's going to change the face of esports. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Just drop us an email and we can start the conversation.